1. Why only 10? At the end of the introductory chapter of my book, I said this: the point of this exercise will be that by imagining all 10 dimensions, we will have imagined a fabric that can account for all aspects of reality. A tall order. Let's begin. How do we get to the 10th dimension from the 9th? As with every other dimension, we envision a point that encompasses the entire 9th dimension and call that a point in the next dimension up. Persons familiar with my animation know what I say next. If we're going to imagine the 10th dimension as continuing the cycle and being a line, then we're going to have to imagine a different point that we can draw that line to. But there's no place left to go. By the time we have imagined all possible timelines for all possible universes as being a single point in the 10th dimension, it appears that our journey is done. But is our journey really done? Far from it. The ramifications of this way of visualizing the dimensions are many indeed, and that's why I continue to find things to discuss about this project in my blog, and that's why I've published over 400 videos at my YouTube channel over the past 5 years since this project was launched. Some of the ideas that we haven't even touched on yet since we started this latest series are going to be the subject of this next group of videos, all of which come from a blog entry called Wrapping It Up in the 10th Dimension. So here's part 1, which we'll call Why Only 10? Some people suggest it's arbitrary to stop at 10 dimensions. Did we run out of fingers so we decided that there couldn't be any more? Indeed, if you're not assigning any meaning to the individual dimensions, then the point-line-plane postulate allows you to keep adding as many dimensions as you want. People also ask, aren't there really 11 dimensions? In my book and my blog, I've insisted that 10 is really all you need to consider all aspects of reality, and that supporters of M-theory acknowledge that there are ways in which the 11 dimensions they're talking about are functionally equivalent to the 10 dimensions string theory is talking about. The graphic we're looking at here comes from New Scientist magazine, in a special feature they published in 2011 called Instant Expert Theory of Everything. Please do follow the link to read the whole article. Another way of showing this equivalence is to say that M-theory proposes 10 spatial dimensions plus time. With my project, I say that time isn't a dimension, it's a way of describing change from state to state within any dimension. So the 10th dimension with no time is the ultimate ensemble that Max Tegmark spoke of in his discussion of the different kinds of multiverse, or the timelessness that Gavin Gyorbrand spoke of in Everything Forever, Learning to See Timelessness, or the ultimate multiverse that Brian Greene refers to in the quote with which we started this entry. As I said in my original animation, if there were no superstrings vibrating in the 10th dimension, there would be no reality precipitated in the dimensions below. No time means no vibrations, no change. And because every one of the spatial dimensions we're looking at with this project are mutually perpendicular to the others, change in the 10th dimension automatically affects the entire system in various ways. Next time, we'll look at part 2 of this discussion, connecting 0 to 10. Connecting 0 to 10. A number of people who have watched my animation notice that by the time you get to 10 in its unobserved state, in a way you're back to where you started, with a point of indeterminate size. As I've said before, this was the intent of the Helix logo created for this project. The 0, or nothingness, and the 10, or the omniverse, really are connected concepts, and that's why I represent them as being on a line inside the other dimensions, as you can see in the animation we're looking at here. Would this connection allow for a repeating cycle, effectively creating infinite dimensions? Though some people have suggested that idea, it doesn't feel quite right to me. The idea that there are really no dimensions, that there are just infinite vectors within one underlying fabric which is dimensionless, actually resonates more strongly for me, because that's a way of describing the 10th dimension using a different mindset. But personally, I still believe there are good reasons to believe in the existence of extra dimensions beyond space-time, and that there are good opportunities within these paths to the infinitely large and the infinitesimally small for us to consider the continuously repeating recursion that relates conceptually to Douglas Hofstadter's I Am a Strange Loop, or John Wheeler's description of the universe as a self-excited circuit. In imagining the 9th dimension, we looked at Stuart Kaufman's idea that there is a force for ceaseless creativity in the natural universe, and we'll return to ideas related to all this in upcoming entries. Next time, we'll discuss this question: what is life? Three. What is life? If we're trying to build an image which reflects all aspects of reality, how do life and consciousness fit into this picture? Erwin Schrödinger's definition of life is that it's a unique process which creates pockets of negative entropy. Physicists talk about the beginning of the universe being the most highly ordered, lowest entropy version of our universe, and how the arrow of time represents an overall climb in the amount of entropy, despite the efforts of life within those little pockets where, as Dylan Thomas put it so beautifully, it rages against the dying of the light. This theme of life and consciousness being like a fire, a spark that somehow engages with space-time and our fifth-dimensional probability space to keep itself moving forward is the theme of a number of the 26 songs I created for this project. I talked about those songs and this way of thinking about life and creativity in a blog entry called Novelty. The phrase self-excited circuit comes from a paper published in 1979 by physicist John Wheeler. You can read about it in the Wikipedia article on digital physics. As part of his cognitive theoretic model of the universe, the CTMU, Christopher Langan, who some of you will know as the smartest man in America, has published an animated version of the simple drawing Wheeler created for his paper on the self-excited circuit, showing a U standing for universe, incorporating an eyeball representing the quantum observer, looking at its tail that represents the information side of the information equals reality concept that we talk about regularly with this project. Wheeler also coined the phrase it from bit, which ties nicely to these discussions. So is the universe itself a self-excited circuit that was most excited at the Big Bang and is slowly winding down from there? Or was the universe in a superposition of possible states until life first emerged somewhere and began observing more organized versions of the universal wave function from that point on in the world line? The biocentric universe theory supports the latter idea. Perhaps Stuart Kaufman's God 2.0 supports the former? I think there's interesting evidence for both ideas, but ultimately I lean more towards the idea that there are organizing patterns in the extra dimensions which exist outside of time and space, and which have selected this or any other universe, and which keep the universe from dissolving into chaos. Love and Gravity is a blog entry of mine from last year which takes this idea out to a more metaphysical level if you're interested. I've used similar logic to argue for dark matter and dark energy as evidence of extra dimensions. There are two other more recent blog entries I would invite you to read about these ideas of extra-dimensional patterns: Quantum Weirdness and Water, and Time Crystals. In my follow-up book to Imagining the 10th Dimension, a collaboration with visual artist Marilyn E. Robertson called O is for Omniverse, we devoted the letter J to John Wheeler. I'd like to finish by showing the video for letters I and J from that book, and you can see a lot more if you go to omniverse.tv. Next time, we're going to look at Timelessness and the ultimate ensemble. O is for omniverse. I and J. Information and reality equal each other. Can this be? If information, a word that starts with I, equals reality, try to visualize how patterns and shapes that flow within and behind and around create what we're in. Energy or mass, genes, memes or spimes, waves and shapes, fractals and lines. I is also for indeterminacy, the unobserved state that underlies reality, where all possible states enfold together and find their balance in perfect symmetry. J is for John Wheeler, a famous physicist who drew a strange eyeball looking at its tail, as a way to imagine how some branches of our line might be changed in the past as we look back from today. So the branching tree that extends from now is even more surprising. It branches either way. Four. Timelessness and the ultimate ensemble. If the universe had the least amount of entropy at its beginning, and Schrödinger described life as a unique process which creates negative entropy, does that mean that in a sense he thought the universe was the most alive back at its beginning? Kevin Georbrand's remarkable insight in his book Everything Forever was that we're not moving from low entropy to high entropy with our arrow of time. Instead, we're moving from a high grouping order to a high symmetry order. I like this because it allows for a way to imagine a universal creative force which expresses itself throughout the world line of the universe, and which makes sense when we view our universe as a single data set from a timeless perspective. From our own vantage point, then, both time and anti-time represent the same thing, a naturally occurring return to balance. Ultimately, our universe or any other arises from a breaking of symmetry, and outside of this system is a return to the underlying fabric of reality, the unobserved 10th dimension, the ultimate ensemble, the Teilhardian omega point, the Gödelian outside the system, the computational underpinnings behind digital physics or Tegmark's mathematical universe hypothesis, ultimate enlightenment, or the omniverse. And that's what we're visualizing with every single dimension in this project. How can we perceive any dimension from outside of itself, from the truest perspective, which is timelessness? The video for imagining the 9th dimension provides one way of thinking about this. It shows how each dimension, perceived in its entirety as a single timeless point, becomes a point on the surface of a finite but unbounded hypersphere in the next dimension. Physicist and author Frank Wilczek recently put forth 2 papers which add a very interesting spin on this idea of extra-dimensional patterns that reside within a timeless whole as well. Wilczek proposes that just as there are naturally emerging crystal structures in the 3rd dimension, this same effect could be happening within what he calls time crystals as well. Does a phrase like time crystals sound like science fiction? You bet it does. But Frank Wilczek is a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, so we should take a serious look at this creative new idea. And speaking of novel approaches to visualizing reality, next entry is going to be called Psychedelics and Surprises. 5. Psychedelics and Surprises. Today's entry is called Psychedelics and Surprises. One of the surprises for me with this project was how many people from the psychedelics community have embraced this way of visualizing the dimensions. For instance, author and research scientist David J. Brown, a world-renowned expert on psychedelics, said this about my book. Imagining the 10th Dimension is one of the most brilliantly conceived and mind-stretching books that I've ever encountered. With no psychedelics experience myself, I find this particularly fascinating. In this blog, I've talked about Graham Hancock's amazing book, Supernatural, which advances the idea that persons around the world and throughout human history have had experiences and visions when they're in altered states of consciousness, whether those are self-induced trance states or through the use of psychoactive substances, that show remarkable similarities. Do such experiences lift the veil, so to speak, and allow people to see actual aspects of the extra dimensions? It's a possibility I find very attractive. In my book and this blog, I've explored many other out-there concepts that can tie to this. Are prescience, déjà vu, out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, perhaps even ghosts and spirit voices, all examples of how there are patterns of awareness which exist outside of our limited space-time window into reality? You might be interested to read this recent article from New Scientist, which is titled, "Drug Hallucinations Look Real in the Brain." Another of the surprises for me with this project was the people who looked at my Helix logo and presumed this was all about Kabbalah, because of the similarities to the Tree of Life. Yes, I see the connections, but I don't recall ever seeing the Tree of Life until after my book was published, and comments started to come my way about this coincidence. What I find particularly interesting is that there are schools of thought within the Kabbalah which teach that we can divide our reality into 3 triads, which can be summed up as the material, the moral, and the intellectual. In the last chapter of my book, I reached a similar conclusion that there are 3 systems interacting through constructive interference, all of which in their unobserved state can be assembled into the 10th dimension as a point of indeterminate size. Those 3 systems are 1, the physical world, 2, the quantum observer who, through constructive interference, is actively engaged in observing specific aspects of the other 2 systems, and 3, the information equals reality world of memes, patterns of grouping, or waveforms. Likewise, it's interesting to relate this to Popperian cosmology. Philosopher Karl Popper proposed that there are 3 worlds, the physical, the mind which observes, and mental patterns of information. I talked about all this in greater detail in my blog entry, 3 Becomes 1. Is this recurring idea that there is a physical world, a world created by observation participation, and an underlying realm of information, another example of how imagining the 10th dimension plugs into some deeper truths about our reality? I believe it is. And constructive interference is an important phrase to keep in mind through all this, as it applies to quantum mechanics, the universe as a hologram, Wheeler's self-excited circuit, and the role of life and consciousness in creating this universe or any other. Next time, our topic will be observers and addictions. Till then, enjoy the journey. 6. Observers and addictions. Last time we looked at a recurring idea that comes from a number of different schools of thought, that there is a physical world, a world created by observation participation, and an underlying realm of information. This time, let's look at one of those ideas more carefully, a world created by observation and participation. In Imagining the Eighth Dimension, we mentioned a concept from a paper published by Lee Smolin and others at archive.org, which proposes that we can have a deeper understanding of general relativity if we accept that different observers construct different spacetimes, which are observer-dependent slices of phase space. And with this project, we keep returning to Everett's idea that there is an unchanging set of all possible states, or phase space, which exists outside of space-time, and that quantum mechanics makes the most sense when we understand that this is not a process of collapse we are talking about here, it is only a process of observation. Does that mean then that we, as quantum observers, are each creating our own reality? And if so, how much control do we have? There's no question that each of us is at the center of the observed universe, and even though that might sound like a return to ancient thinking that the sun revolves around the earth, the cosmological horizon is real, and this fact would be just as true for an observer on the other side of our currently observed universe. They too would find themselves to be at the center of a space-time sphere, with their very own unique version of the cosmological horizon. So here I am in a unique universe created through my participation as a quantum observer, which is part of a 5D probability space as we discussed in Imagining the Fifth Dimension. Does that mean I'm a part of Wheeler's self-excited circuit, the universe observing itself? Does that make me part of a universal creative force, or as Einstein referred to it, the old one? In fact, am I an aspect of God, observing some unique slice of my creation? Or am I part of an underlying life force which creates pockets of negative entropy, pushing against the natural decline of the universe? I would say these are all different ways of thinking about the same idea. Use whichever one you're the most comfortable with if you feel so inclined. For me, the most important part of this discussion is not what label you place upon this process, but the fact that this way of visualizing our reality presents a strong argument for free will. Yes, there is ultimately only one underlying form, one underlying geometry, one omniverse, but you and I, and all living things, are within something much more interesting. We are each moving points within a fifth-dimensional probability space, observing a shared consensus reality which connects us all together, but also each observing our own unique version of that space. For persons trapped in negative loops of abuse or addiction, this is particularly important to understand. If free will is an illusion, then how can we hope to break out of these patterns? The fifth dimension shows the way. As I say in my song, Addictive Personality, every day is a new day. Every day you're back to one. And today can be the new day when you say you're finally done. Not all habits are bad, of course, and it's in our nature to be attracted to things that make us feel good. The addictions we're talking about here are the ones that are the opposite of the universal creative force, the ones that conspire to extinguish that spark of life which Schrödinger described. Each of us, with our free will, have to be the one to decide whether we're on the path we want to be on, and to recognize that we have the power to change that path if we choose to do so. Does that mean we're magical creatures capable of changing anything about our reality? Does it mean a starving child in Africa can become rich and famous simply by thinking better thoughts? No. But it also means that we are not the powerless automatons that the hard determinists would have us believe ourselves to be, and that there is a constantly evolving, best possible version of ourselves that already exists within our fifth-dimensional probability space, which we each have the potential to get to with the choices we're able to make. Last entry, in Psychedelics and Surprises, we looked at an article published not long ago in New Scientist entitled Drug Hallucinations Look Real in the Brain. The article talks about a new study which demonstrates that, as far as the brain is concerned, there is no difference between what a person sees with their eyes and what a person sees when taking ayahuasca, a psychoactive drug used weekly by some Brazilian religious groups, and which we talked about in David J. Brown and Psychedelics. The New Scientist article goes on to explain that ayahuasca shows good promise in the treatment of addiction, which reminded me of this interesting coincidence. As regular visitors to this blog will know, I have lived in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan all my life. My province was where some of the most leading-edge research into the use of psychedelics to treat addiction was conducted back in the 50s and early 60s, until the new war on drugs made it impossible for that research to continue back then. With my project, I have tried to promote drug-free ways of visualizing what's outside of our reality. As a person who has never taken psychedelics and has no plans to do so, I am fascinated by the possibility that having a deeper intuitive understanding of the extra dimensions might actually help someone dealing with addiction or depression. But as I've said before, I'm also grateful to psychedelics experts like David J. Brown, who have embraced this project as another way into a deeper understanding of reality and our participation within its construction. Next in this series, our topic will be duality and consciousness. Seven, duality and consciousness. One of the 26 songs I attached to this project is called Automatic. In it, I talk about the powerful idea put forth by Julian Jaynes in his groundbreaking book, The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Jaynes proposed that until about 3,000 years ago, humans lived their lives with their conscious and subconscious minds fully integrated. When the subconscious developed a plan or had an intuition, humans heard this as a voice inside their heads, which they often interpreted to be the voices of gods or ancestors. Then something happened. The narrator voice of the conscious mind assumed dominance, and the subconscious mind's processes became more submerged. Still, there are a great many activities which we perform better when we can quiet our narrator voice. Driving a car, hitting a golf ball, playing a musical instrument, or typing on a keyboard all go better when we can get our narrator voice to stop conducting traffic, saying, do this, now do that, and just let things flow. And yet, despite the advantages of this mode of operation, most of us have been taught to be suspicious of those moments when we stop narrating. We're told to stop daydreaming, get our minds back in the game, and so on. Most people are comfortable with the idea that there is some kind of duality to our consciousness. The difference between left brain, right brain approaches to processing the data coming in from our senses is well documented. And with this project, we've often talked about the me that is attached to the physical body and the other parts of our awareness that are more connected outside of space and time. Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor's book, My Stroke of Insight, is amazing to me because it blends these two ideas so beautifully. Is the right brain more connected to those larger patterns that are outside of our physical reality? Dr. Taylor provides a compelling personal narrative that tells us this is so, and the underlying instantaneous connections of the quantum world are very easy to tie to these ideas as well. Here again is where we get into these more metaphysical ideas. What I call me is much more than the collection of memories attached to my physical body. An instinct, intuition, inspiration, creativity, and the underlying processes of life itself are part of the gigantic patterns that exist outside of our physical reality. This is a dynamic system we're talking about here, with each of us assuming new patterns of awareness, discarding old ones, becoming entrained and entraining others with the wave-like interactions of constructive and destructive interference that are occurring within the extra dimensions to create our observed reality. Is it possible for these patterns to exist completely separate from a physical body? Proponents of out-of-body experiences and lucid dreaming would say yes, and anyone with a sufficiently convincing supernatural story to tell will also be much more likely to accept this possibility. Anthony Peake's work puts a tighter focus on these ideas. In his 2008 book, The Daemon, he offers evidence that each of us have a left brain physical consciousness called the eidolon, and we each have a right brain metaphysical awareness called the daemon, which has the foreknowledge of what is to come and sometimes steers the physical body into better outcomes. In terms of Everett's many worlds and my approach to visualizing the dimensions, could this daemon be an awareness operating from the sixth-dimensional phase space of all possible outcomes for our universe, traveling from conception to death with each version of a unique individual as they physically navigate the possible world lines of their fifth-dimensional probability space? I had the pleasure of being interviewed on Anthony's show last year. Here's a link to that video. Next entry is called We Are All Quanta. I hope to see you then. Eight. We are all quanta. In the quantum description of reality, nothing is continuous, but everything is connected. Do you remember the term wavicles? Everything that appears to act as a wave is actually a particle, or a slice of reality, when you get down to the quantum view. This project keeps coming back to quantum mechanics. The fact that our reality is divided into quantum frames and not continuous, the branching probabilistic outcomes of Everett's many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, and the idea that everything is potentially connected within the underlying quantum world is central to this new way of thinking about time and space. Ultimately, does everything fit together through instantaneous quantum superposition across space, across time, and across all of the different versions of our universe or any other? Is it startling to think that the point of indeterminate size that we start from is also equal to the unimaginably gigantic concept we end up at with this project? And to consider that the nested hyperspheres of each additional dimension can also be encompassed by this point of indeterminate size? No matter where we end up, we need to acknowledge that quantum mechanics is the most successful theory of reality devised so far. So whatever theory of everything we're trying to get to, we should keep in mind the truth about the underlying quantum nature of the universe we're in. Ultimately, we are all quanta. We are created by constructive interference, so saying that we're wavicles also works, but each of us is a unique pattern and a subset of something larger. So as we think about there being a duality to our awareness, a left brain physical and a right brain metaphysical, it's interesting to think of our physical existence as it's defined by branching paths within the fifth dimensional probability space and the quantum wave function. In a blog entry called Entangled Neurons, we looked at a new scientific study indicating that quantum entanglement is intrinsic to the process of memory creation. And in Entangled Awareness and OBEs, I said this: right at this instant, I am part of a cloud of probabilistic me's that are all continuing on the same general path, the same branch. That's true at the quantum level, and it's true at the macro level. All of the tiny random occurrences and inconsequential actions, should I put my hand here or here when I push that door open, tend to cancel each other out, to keep us moving in the same trajectory. It's only when our choice, or chance, or the actions of others create an event that really does split us onto a new fifth-dimensional path that a long-term memory is created. For years, scientists have been fond of saying that quantum physics has nothing to do with the warm and wet world of living things. But that opinion is now changing. A paper published last year at archive.org suggests that DNA is held together using quantum entanglement. And in other blog entries like The Quantum Observer and Creativity and the Quantum Universe, we've looked at new evidence that photosynthesis and bird navigation are also utilizing quantum processes. Ideas such as these are the first inklings of a new science called quantum biology. And this all ties very nicely to the idea that life itself is a unique process which is engaged with our space-time in ways that transcend the limits of the here and the now, in the same way that quantum entanglement and superposition seem supremely mysterious until we accept that there is more to the universe than the limited space-time reality we see around us. As I say in song number 1 of the 26 songs I created for this project, everything fits together. I hope that this project has helped to awaken your senses to the possibilities of just how true that phrase really is. Next in this series, an entry called Scientific American on Rob Bryanton. 9. Scientific American on Rob Bryanton. Last summer I was interviewed by Ben Good, a blogger who writes for Scientific American, and the resulting article was called Has Science Gone Viral? Here's a few paragraphs to whet your appetite. Please follow the link for the whole article. Wikipedia defines a virus as a small infectious agent that can replicate only inside the living cells of organisms. The use of viral terminology to describe the movement and sharing of online content is very apt. However, whilst science has given the phenomenon its name, the question persists as to whether or not it has truly gone viral in online video. As a source of media, YouTube is a titanic entity. With 3 billion videos watched per day, it is the most popular place to try and create an online visual phenomenon. Science does form a proportion of the millions of hours of video on the site, but according to Kevin Aloka, YouTube Trends Manager, there is a huge opportunity for science that we haven't quite seen taken advantage of yet. While it may not have gained the view counts of Justin Bieber or people getting hit in the face or kittens, there are people out there who are producing high-quality science content. One such individual is Rob Bryanton, whose physics videos have had over 6 million views, with his Imagining the 10th Dimension video receiving particular praise and attention. The project was born from a personal obsession I've had since I came up with this idea in the early 1980s. I imagined a way to be able to visualize the extra spatial dimensions. And when I then discovered that with string theory there were 10 spatial dimensions, I created this video so I could give people a way to visualize it. That was launched in July 2006, and it immediately took off, he said. Rob's videos demonstrate the medium being used as an engaging way of explaining complex scientific ideas. Thank you so much for your support, Ben, and also to Tom Ridgewell, the hugely popular YouTuber whose Tomscaw channel is currently at almost 200 million views. It was Tom who recommended to Ben Good that he take a look at my project. Thanks, Tom. Near the end of this article, Ben returns to the discussion of my videos and offers this. While the respect for professional scientists is important and understandable, it shouldn't be at the expense of amateur scientists and enthusiasts. YouTube began life as a place for amateur filmmakers to show their wares, and it would be a shame if, in its rise to become a media-dominant force, it lost the considered lay people like Rob. Well said, Ben. Next time, we're going to take a look at a newly revised version of the video that started it all for this project, Imagining the 10th Dimension. Till then, enjoy the journey.